Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jeremie Loncka. I'm Director of Programming for the Actors Gang Prison Project. It is such an honor to have you guys tuning in today. I just want to acknowledge that, we're in difficult times, and the fact that we're able to join and have a conversation today, thanks to the efforts of Scott and Kurt and their team, really means a lot to us. I'm thrilled. I have a bunch of friends who I've had the privilege of working with for the past half a decade here to share their experience with you. What we're here to do is talk about our alumni network. I have three friends who are teaching artists with the Actors Gang, Rich Loya, Major Bunton, and Dich here with me today. And we also have four members who essentially run Avenal State Prison, who have been super supportive of our program over the years. And they've been instrumental in helping us develop the alumni network. They have a very unique approach at Avenal State Prison that we thought it might be appropriate to take a little time to talk about today. Their approach is unique, but also it's incredibly effective. And so what I want to do right now is just catch everybody up. I know people are tuning in from all over. If you're not familiar, the Actors Gang is simply a theater company in Culver City. It's started by the actor Tim Robbins, who you might know from Shawshank Redemption or Bull Durham or Howard the Duck. He's done a lot of stuff. He's a great guy. He's always writing and producing stuff. We as an ensemble theater are creating work that we tour around the nation, around the world, and it's our artistic home. But specifically, we're obviously here to talk about the Actors Gang Prison Project, which started back in 2006 with Sabra Williams. And what we've done over the last 14 years is we have continued to go into the California State prison system and work in partnership with the men and women inside, some of whom are now out and are teaching artists and who are on this call today, to develop a curriculum. And that curriculum is based in what we call Commedia dell'arte. If you're not familiar with Commedia, that's fair enough. It's a 16th century form of theater. It's improv based. It's a masked style of theater. It's played in these beautiful half masks, which when we started this work, we couldn't take into prison. So we would bring in lipstick and eyeliner and blush and all of the stuff that, to be frank, men on a level 4 prison tend to want to shy away from, but hopefully develop an appreciation for over time. Specifically, the work we do focuses around emotions, 4 emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. And those are 4 emotions that we believe have been the 4 core emotions that have been scientifically proven to exist. And so we bring this art form in as an artistic tool, essentially, just to help individuals to start to get to know themselves better, hopefully to start to identify emotions in other people, form empathy, and consequently start a theater company inside of a prison. And so what we do is we'll go in for 7 days and we'll work for a class, 25 participants, men or women, depending on what institution we're in. And then we leave. We come back to Culver City and we say, good luck. And actually, that is one of the most important parts of our program. We didn't know it at the time when we were first starting this, but far more important than the technique itself is this thing of handing the work over to the participants inside. And the reason that is so significant is because our classes are racially diverse. They're diverse in terms of gang affiliation, in terms of amount of time spent possibly incarcerated. We asked that members of the class, some of them are very be pro-programming, running a lot of programming. Some of them are possibly getting written up all the time, want nothing to do with programming. We really want as diverse of a class as we can possibly get because we find that that pushes the conversation. And then when we leave after 7 days, they continue to meet week after week. And we ask that they run the program in a way that there's no leader, there's no follower. They have to figure out a way amongst themselves to communicate, listen, lead from behind, all skills that we believe will help serve as these men and women get out and come back into the community and begin to look for work. The only other important thing that I want to make note of before we get into it is just the way we've structured things. And I know some of you are in California, and I'm sorry if this is super redundant, you know it well probably, but for those who aren't, the California prison system is tiered, right? So the highest level security would be a level 4 prison, and then it would go down, 4, 3, 2. Somebody might be able to get out, go to a reentry center, depending on their case, and then back out into their community. Within that tiered system, the population, it gets a little complicated, but to make it simple, is split. You have sensitive needs, which is essentially protected custody, where an individual on that yard might be at a threat to be in general population, which is the main population. And so what we've done is installed programming that if somebody comes in at a level 4, whether an SNY or GP, they can continue to program over the years and always find an Actors Gang class that they want to go to as their points drop and they're able to transfer to different prisons. They can get out of prison depending on their case and go to a reentry center, continue with the Actors Gang. And then this is why we're here to talk to you today. The issue that we had never been able to figure out an answer to was what happens then when somebody's out, returned to their community, and they're like, I've taken the Actors Gang for the last decade. What do I do now? ... And so we're lucky enough to have John here today, who's our program coordinator of the Alumni Network, which is our answer to that question. So John, can you tell us a little bit, what is the Alumni Network? What's your role within it, and how's it valuable?
First off, hi everyone, my name is John Dich, and I'm the Alumni Advocacy Coordinator for the Actors Gang Prison Project. One thing I want to say about the network is that it's so supportive of everyone once they come out. So what I do is that I'm the point person for someone that wants to continue with the program. They would typically reach out to us via text message, email, the website, social media, whatever it may be. And I would contact them back and direct them to our contact sheet where they will provide us the information, and then I would get the ball rolling to get them involved in the network. When we have trainings, any type of support they need, we'll try to provide them as much as possible. Just mentorship. Eventually, if they want to become a teaching artist, we do conduct Monday night trainings where they go through a process, and it's not guaranteed that they'll be a teaching artist, but definitely there's the opportunity. So I've been with the network since 2016 while I was inside on Avenal. Came out and eventually became staff with the Actors Gang. One thing I know about this program is that it's so life-changing. For me, I'm a visual and hands-on type of learner. And so once I took this program, it completely changed my life. And that's why this program is so important to me and why I continue doing the work with them. It's just amazing work overall. We have over 50 alumni that got out, and a lot of them still continue with the work. So I'm definitely proud of this organization and how it deals with formerly incarcerated and how they provide the resources necessary for them to thrive out here. Jeremie?
Thanks, John. So I imagine that there are a lot of arts practitioners who work in the prisons who are watching this, who are starting to hire returned citizens, starting to find places within their staff for returned citizens. And it's awesome. When we go to conferences now, we're seeing more and more individuals who might have learned an art form outside or inside the prison, now outside and holding positions of power within their organization. One of the things I want to just address, because when we went through our restructuring in 2018, I'm not sure where other programs are at outside of the state of California, but essentially what we had to do is we had to take a hard look at ourselves. And from the outside, if you were to observe our program, you'd be like, oh, things are incredibly successful. And they were. We had funding. We had quantitative data that showed that the recidivism rate for somebody who came through the class was 10.6 at that percent chance to go back once they're out. We had a demand from the state, specifically wardens, one of whom is on this call, who I still owe more programming to, who wanted the program. But when we actually looked at our teaching pool, we realized that it wasn't sustainable to continue to expand, partially because of just the amount of people we had in our pool and the amount of labor it would take to expand. But also we were lacking a diversity in voices in our own teaching pool. When we go into specifically like our youth program here in Los Angeles, and we go into these neighborhoods and communities, we couldn't provide a teaching artist who knew and understood what that experience was. And we wanted to be able to do that. And so we were committed to just stop expanding at that point, and look at changing our leadership within the classroom, the way we are going about asking for funding, and essentially change our approach even in the classroom to these programs that we were continuing to run. And in hindsight, it has proven incredibly valuable as we've navigated the last couple of years. before COVID hit, which is its own circumstance, which we're all dealing with in our own way. And we can talk a little bit about how we're navigating that. We had yard integration here in the state of California in 2019, which was very difficult on the lower level yards. They integrated and brought SNY and GP together into non-designated. And it was hard for, I would say, participants, staff, programs coming in. And our alumni network has been what has helped us to navigate that over the last couple of years. But it wasn't through any great vision of mine or anybody else's at the Actors Gang. It was actually a joint effort and all of us trying to figure out this thing together. And it really started, I was at the theater one day, and my good friend Rich just happened to show up and knock on the door, and here we are now. Do you want to fill us in, Rich, on like what that process was like, how you become so instrumental to this thing?
Yes, of course. First of all, Mr. Campbell, pleasure to meet you, even if it's under these circumstances. Ms. Lovett, always a pleasure. Captain Tantakit, congratulations. I only knew you as a lieutenant. And Ms. Warden Ndoh, words cannot express what this means to me, having us join you in a meeting like this, because it's so important for the audience to know how this all started, right? So before I begin, I want to take you back to the beginning of being on a facility that had no program, right? I was at Avenal on F yard, used to be 6 yard, for 9 years. The first 4.5 years, we were locked down. There was no kind of programming whatsoever. No visiting, no canteen, no packages, nothing. And so as lifers, I was a lifer. I spent almost 30 years in prison. As a lifer, there was no hope. There was no hope. There was, like I said, there was no programming going on. And we were at the end of our wits as far as, what do we do? Like, are we going to continue this behavior? And being involved with my associations, I was a follower at that time, right? And so what does that mean? That means I'm going to be locked down. I'm not going to get visits. I'm not going to get to see my family and all those things that I mentioned. For 4.5 years, we were going through this. And one day, Ms. Ndoh sends a message to us that she wants to meet with us. And as inmates, as convicts, as Southerners, we don't meet with administration. We don't meet with officers, especially the high ups. But one thing I would say about Ms. Ndoh is she was so determined to meet with us, because she would come to the yard. She would come to the building where we were housed and say, you guys, I just want to speak with you. So of course we had our little meeting gathering and decided, well, what do we have to lose? Let's go hear what she has to say. So they escort us to the SAP building. We had to walk across the yard, so everybody's seeing us going into this building with all these staff. And at that time, Ms. Ndoh wasn't the warden, she was associate warden. But there was like super security, like when the president is being escorted, right? There was super security around her, and we all got into the SAP building, and there we were. We were about 40 Southern lifers in the building. And she comes in, and we're all like, okay, what is this about? What is she gonna say to us? And I can't speak for Ms. Ndoh, maybe she can say, but she says to us, hi, thank you for coming. I just wanna say, I want you to know that I have your best interest in my heart, and I wanna help. I wanna help, but you have to trust me. And of course, we all looked at each other like, trust her, that's the last thing we're gonna do, because that's how we're programmed. But we listened to what she had to say. She talked for a good 15, 20 minutes, and she says, I care about you guys. I want you to go home, but I need you to trust me. She just kept counting that word on us. I need you to trust me. Trust me. I will open it up for you. I will get you programming. I will help you get home, but you need to trust me. And so there wasn't a lot of feedback. There wasn't a lot of interaction between us. I kind of felt like they were hoping we would speak. We didn't. We were shut down, but we heard her. So we went back to our building, and we decided that night. We're like, you know what? Let's trust her, because no one's ever come and do that for us. No one's ever come and say, I care about you. No one's ever come and says, I love you. You guys are like my children in so many ways. And so we said, okay, let's see what this is going to be. So we decided to program, because the factions that were involved, we weren't getting along. And so we reached out to the other faction, like, hey, let's resolve it. Let's try to make this work, to see if Miss Ndoh is going to keep her word. And I can't tell you what that did for the facility, for the yard, for the prison in general. Because once program opened, like, programs were just trying to get in there and get us started, get us going. Because there were so many people that were eager, that were hungry to come home and get involved and light that hope that we had lost, right? For 4.5 years, we were locked down. And so I was fortunate to work in the program office with Lieutenant Crenshaw. And one day he comes and says, hey, there's a new program coming in. It's the Actors Gang and Tim Robbins. And I'm like, okay, I recognize the name, but what's the program about, Lieutenant? I don't know, it's just Tim Robbins and some actors. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? He goes, well, I want you to get a group together, and it starts next week, September 19th. It's a whole week, it's 7 days, it's from 9 to 1. I'm like, okay, what kind of group is it? He's like, some actors are coming in. That's all we knew, that's all he had for me. And I'm, okay. At that time, we had been programming now for quite a while, and I knew a group of men that were in the process of going through the changes. We all wanted to go home, but things hold us back. And it's not until you become your own self, your own leader, and let go of those associations, if you can, that now you're going to decide, I want to go home. This is what I got to do now to go home to my family. And so I knew more or less who I can go and ask to join me in this group. So I said, okay, Lieutenant, I think I know who to ask. I'll ask the guys that are in YAP and in SAP. So YAP is a group that they deal with kids who are on probation. They come in and talk to him. And in the SAP building, they're mentors, looking to be counselors. They're all doing great things. Lieutenant says to me, no, I don't want them. Why does it always have to be that same group that gets the good groups? He says, bring me the F-ups. At that, I'm like, what? He goes, yes, bring me the bad, bring me the F-ups. I'm like, Lieutenant, come on, man. I'm going to be in charge of this. I'm not going to do that. He goes, I'm telling you, bring me the F-ups. I mix it up. I trust that you'll bring a good group. Before I continue, so yes, Major and John, you were considered 2 of the F-ups in the yard. So I said, okay, Lieutenant, I'm going to go around, but I knew I was in a point in my life where I knew I can't play the favoritism. I can't play the homie card. It would have been easy for me to go get my homies involved and get all the spots open, because he wanted 24, 25, including me, for this group. But to be, and I respect the Lieutenant. So I said, man, to make this work, I have to be true to myself. I had to be true to this program that's coming in. And so I knew I had to go to every race. And this is what made the group so unique, is that I approached the blacks, I approached the whites, I approached the northern, the Bulldogs, I approached the others, the Paisas, our Mexican nationals. And what I would get back is like, Rich, are you doing it? I'm like, yes, this is why I'm coming to you. Yes, I'm gonna do it. All right, sign me up. So once I had almost every race involved and signed up to do it, that's what made this program work, because everybody was ready to try something different. and not be stuck in the prison ways. And so, I mean, I can go on and on and on about what it's done inside, but from those relationships, those 25 of us that signed up for that week, we continue to meet every week. And then things started happening where we can't, as a race, we can't really associate, let alone be seen sharing food, um, drinking with each other, eating. And in that class, we were doing that. Blacks, whites, Southerners, the Northerners, the others, the Paisa, we were doing that. And so on the yard, they started seeing this. And they would question, like, man, what are you guys doing there? Because every time you guys come out of that group, every one of you is smiling, you're laughing, you guys come out with a good time. And so how can we get involved? We actually had an audition to get involved, but that's another story. But yeah, those relationships that were made in there, we're out here now as teaching artists. And we continue to do the work. We work at reentry. We're now working with the youth with probation. We're in 13 prisons, 15 yards. And yes, we spent 30, 20 something years, I don't know, Johnny, Major, trying to get out of there. And now we go back in because we know what this work did for, I know what it did for me. And so that's why I continue to do the work. But that's what I got. Sorry, I know I rambled, but that's what I got. And okay, so we are formerly incarcerated, right? We have learned a style of theater. So yes, we consider ourselves actors, but the star of this show, and Ms. Ndoh, again, well, I can't wait to go back if I get to see you before you leave. If not, thank you for coming in that day and for saying what you said to us, because I'm home now with my family and I get to share those moments now with my brothers out here because we decided to trust you. So without further ado, I would like to bring in Ms. Ndoh.
So I'll start with a story. My dad is my hero. So one day I was complaining to my father about somebody who I thought didn't treat somebody well. And my father listened. And my father said to me, Rosie, you have a special gift. And not everybody has that. You have the ability to just love people for no reason. So it's a God-given gift. I didn't have to work for it. So in coming to the prison system, I came in as a teacher in 1993. And for some reason, all the teachers transferred all their difficult inmates to my class. And when they came to my class, they stopped being difficult. And everybody wondered what happened. And I used to wonder what happened. And eventually I realized that love unlocks every door. When they walked into my class, they become mine to care for, to protect, and to teach. So in assuming the warden's role in Avenal, I came in not knowing, with the same philosophy. Everybody who was incarcerated in Avenal was mine to love, mine to care for, and my primary mission was to help them find themselves. Because I knew if they found themselves, they'll find their way home. And that was just it. So I was blessed to have the most dynamic staff. I had Dee, I had Tantakit, who were actually in the forefront of looking for programs. And I always said to Dee, say yes to everything, we figure out the details. And sometimes she got so frustrated with me, but she always made it work. And in assuming the warden's role, when I was asked what my goal was by the Office of the Inspector General, the first thing I said was customer services. And who are my customers? The incarcerated, their family, and my staff. My goal was also to bring as many programs as possible, because I knew that was the only way they could find their way home. I also wanted to provide the best environment ever possible for my staff. So I shared my vision with everyone. Love, love, love. Treat everybody well. But I had to model that. And modeling that was easy for me because that was who I naturally was. I just loved. So through that process, my staff who provided them a good environment, even when things were difficult or when the staff was difficult, we loved them into saving themselves. And I've always said, you cannot have your correctional officers or your staff in the front line treat inmates well if you don't treat them well first. And that was what we did. We built a culture of love, customer services, and programs. And we had the right people in the right place. Dee was just right for that job. She was hardcore program initiator. We found different ways to make things work. Even when we didn't have the money, we found a way to fund it. And then we made sure we showed up for the graduation. We made sure we talked to the gentlemen. We made sure we loved on them. We told them how great they were. We gave them a lot of positive reinforcement. And they began to believe in themselves. Not only did they believe in themselves, they began to believe in other people. They began to trust. They began to reach out. And we built a beautiful community. And I miss that community now because of COVID. And to see all these men in Actors Gang go home, not only did they go home, they committed to coming back and sharing their insight and loving on the men who are still inside. And I think it began to perpetuate itself and is a culture now. And Avenal is like no other institution in this state. And I hope it continues. And to you, Loya, I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that day, and I thank you because I think we're the only two people around who still remember that day. And that was it.
Thank you so much for that, Rosemary. I know it's so beautiful to hear you speak about it because we certainly feel that love when we come in, unlike any other institution we're in. Down from the moment we show up, we're greeted at the check-in stand, and it's clear that customer service. It's weird to hear you say that, but it's like we totally feel it feels like that. We're just taken care of across the board, and you know, for the people viewing, like one of the big things as a program we've been up against as we've tried to implement the alumni network is to get men and women on parole to be allowed to go back into the prisons and teach. And it's just, we're navigating with the state how to figure this out. But when we go to Avenal, Rosemary is always just like, no, bring them, bring everybody you want, and we'll figure it out. And Dee helps make that happen with the clearances, and your staff has been so supportive. Rosemary invited Rich and Major to go to the Wardens Conference in the state and help make the case of why it's so important to have men on parole be permitted to go back in and share their story. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Mike, let me ask you this. Is there, it's very clear to me as an arts program that we feel it from the love from you guys as we come in. Have you noticed with your staff, yourself, where programming, the Actors Gang program has influenced staff? I know you're always there. Mike has been great as the PIO coming in and filming our performances and stuff over the years. What have you observed?
Well, kind of like with the inmates, they had a certain state of thinking as officers, correctional officers. They had a gap between what they could do for inmates. When you see the inmates performing something and you don't see changes in their behavior, you kind of stop believing in the programs. So when you start seeing programs like the Actors Gang come in and making a difference with the inmates that have been on the yards for many years, people who have been in the gangs and the negative part of the institution, and start seeing major changes in their behavior and their attitudes and their influence on others, the staff buy in to the program, but more importantly, they buy into investing into that inmate. So you start seeing staff wanting to get involved. You see staff, treating the inmates differently, because in the institution, there's a lot of negativity. And if you don't see something positive come out of it, you kind of go home empty-handed. And when you start seeing the changes in the inmates, and you start seeing changes in programs and other inmates want to get involved, you start seeing hope. And with that hope, you kind of leave work at the end of the day like you made a difference. So that was kind of the thing. I think these programs, and it changes the behaviors of the inmates buying in and believing in something, and going to a program not just to have donuts with their with their friends from other buildings, but they're actually going there to work on themselves. And I think that's something that staff can see. You can't sell that. You have to see that and believe in that. And I think these guys are great examples of making that happen.
Lieutenant Campbell, I saw you shaking your head to that in agreement. What has it been like to step into the culture at Avenal and the position that you are, and what's that been like?
Well, I tell you, I've got 17 years in the department. I was 16 years at Corcoran. So big culture difference, but that was my reason for wanting to come to Avenal. Is I've seen institutions, I've been in an institution with no program or very little program, very little rehabilitative. And I had friends that had transferred here, promoted here, and in talking to them and the impact of a programming institution where the institution and the warden and the staff are really making a difference with the inmate population, and how that makes them feel leaving each day, and how that makes them feel at home and doing their job. I really wanted to be a part of that. I've only been here 7 months, and the pandemic has hampered me from really seeing what Avenal's true potential is. But in the staff that I've talked to, and working with Mike and with Rosemary, being blessed to learn from their example, I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to really being able to take advantage of the programs and learn from the programs and the people that are involved in them.
Right on. We're excited to have you as part of the team for sure. Dee, you have been so instrumental in helping us get this thing established, but specifically with COVID happening, the state of California, for those of you who are tuning in outside of the state, we've been doing distance programming, which I have to imagine has been, a lot to navigate. You have a lot of arts programs who are probably tuning into this panel. Is there anything we can do as arts programs to help you in your role as a community resource manager? What are you noticing? What are you seeing with the way programs are adapting to figure out how to do distance programming in this difficult time?
First off, before I answer your question, Jeremie, I just want to say I am so proud of each one of you all and the changes you've made, the transformations that have taken place in your life and keep up the good work. As far as the alternative programming, yes, it has been a shift. But I will say that it's very much appreciated because it still lets the men know that there are people on the outside who still care, who are still committed, and wants the best for them. It's a different form of teaching. It's not the interaction that they are used to and that they enjoy, but it still gives them something to reach for. It gives them something to still hope for and aspire to getting back to the normal, and know that they'll still have that engagement once they do come back together. So although a lot of programs have gone to alternative programming, they still put personal notes in there to the individuals, just letting them know, we're thinking about you, we're praying for you, we miss you. Just letting them know that they're still on their hearts, they're still at the forefront of their minds, and they're still going to be there to support them with programs, whether it's in person or through distance learning.
Thank you, Dee. Major, as one of the founding members of this class, and as a teaching artist now on the outside, I'm just wondering what skills, what core values have you carried over from the class that you helped form now that you're out and as you're going back into the classroom and teaching, or as you're implementing distance programming and what we're doing with that for the Alumni Network?
Hello, everyone. My name is Major Bunton. I want to say thank you for allowing us to share this space with y'all today. Dee, Rosie, Tantakit, it's definitely an honor to see all of y'all. What I recognized from the program that I was fortunate enough to be a part of through Richard locating me on the yard, I joined this program in 2016, and what I noticed about the program was they had this thing called agreements. And when we first started the class, these agreements were for us to understand how we felt safe in this class, how we were going to have fun, how we were going to interact with each other. And we all had an opportunity to put in the agreements. And so it wasn't just one person talking about the agreements, it was all of us understanding what this agreement is pertaining to the program. And what I realized is that as I made my transition back to the community as a returned citizen, I took on those same agreements for the program, to continue on with the program, to help the program be better. Family as well. I realized that I established a family and relationship with Richard, John, and all the other guys who had joined the program. There was no more racial boundaries about what family looks like. They became my family. And today, I can turn to them for anything. If I'm having technical issues with my computer, whatever that may be, I can always turn to one of these guys and they're there for me, just like the agreements that we made when we were inside. And I think those are a few things that allow me to use as I made my transition back into the free world. Then we decided to go into the prisons, and I took those same agreements that I established within myself, that I was going to be honored to show these guys that this work works. And last but not least, since I've been home, I was able to establish the juvenile halls. I'm going into the juvenile halls as well. I was doing the transitions. And one thing that really stood out to me the most, when I got to Avenal March 6, 2016. When I got to R&R, I told myself, I'm not getting on another bus. I'm paroling from here. I told myself, I said, I ain't getting on no more bus rides. I said, I'm paroling from here. And I looked at R&R and I said, I'll be back. And I promise you, I paroled March 6, 2 years later. Then a year later, I went back into the prison, March 6, which is crazy. So if it doesn't work, I'm telling you, it works. So on top of all that, you know, I have been out here for almost 3 years now, and I've established my own nonprofit. I'm the vice president of my own nonprofit. I have transition homes that we just open up now, and I'm trying to get back to the community. I'm trying to use the Actors Gang and everything that it's given me to give back to our community that can use these resources that will allow them to make the same transitions that John, Richard, and all the rest of the guys who made that leap of faith to believe in this here. And one thing I can say is, when we did the Actors Gang Inside, there we did a play, and at the end of the play, we had a sign and we showed it to the audience. And the audience was our families, friends, wardens. It was all types of people in the audience. And all my friends had different signs. My personal sign that I had, my sign said, "Thank you, CDCR, for not giving up on me." That sign meant a lot to me because I was bad, and God never gave up on me. Even when I was running down the street doing everything that was up under the sun, and y'all never gave up on me. And that meant a lot to me. And through the Actors Gang, I can say they given me hope, and they give me a sense of humanity that I deserve to have today. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Major. That was beautiful. I'm wondering, Rich, if you want to speak at all about when this first started, when we first started to implement this in 2018, there was a real push for us to adapt our training. And what that meant is Rich and I spent a lot of time out on the road together, and he had to listen to a lot of annoying conversations with me, asking him to adapt certain things about his teaching style. And we spent a lot of time training together. And I would argue that over the last year, there's been a major shift. Rich oversees, with the help of Major, our reentry center at Walden House. And specifically now, as well as we've had to adapt and we can't meet in person, our alumni network gets together on Thursday nights, and they hold these, they're figuring out how to adapt this Commedia style to Zoom, and pretty successfully. But with your expertise very much at the forefront, Rich, do you want to speak a little bit about what your place is in that, the shift that's happened, and kind of just what you're seeing right now?
Yeah. So understand when I was chosen to facilitate, how Jeremie mentioned earlier, that they come in for 7 days and then they'd leave, and they'll come back in 7 weeks to check up on us. And as they left, myself and two other brothers in charge of continuing to run that class, I knew the language. I knew how to push these men. I knew what buttons I could and could not push. And so now transitioning out here and understanding, while I'm not in there, and I do not know these men, I don't know this group, I can't have that same approach. So I had to take a step back and realize what my position is here. Though I'm leading, I can't push those same buttons that I knew I could push inside, because these are men that are just recently paroled, and they're at reentry, but they're in the group. They show up, and they look at me like a teacher. They don't look at me like someone on parole, And so it gave me the confidence. It gave me the confidence to teach, to co-teach, like Jeremie mentioned, the training. Our alumni who come out, who want to be involved. Prior to COVID, we had trainings Monday nights that we would go, and these are volunteer trainings. And a lot of times guys are working, and the training is from 6 to 11. And Major is one. Major was coming. For those of you who don't know, San Bernardino is about an hour-and-a-half drive to the theater, and Major will come before work because he worked at his place at 3, 4 in the morning. So he would leave the theater around 11:30 to go, I don't know, sleep for an hour or two and then go to work. But his commitment, the commitment level he talked about, and getting all the training at the theater, along with what I already had from inside, and I took it to the reentry. Okay, they're receiving it. Now, how can I go further with it? Because now they're not. I'm confident now that they're not looking at me like, oh, he's a parolee. No, we're teaching artists. This isn't something I dreamed of doing. I'll be honest with you, but I knew that I had to continue to do the work, because it changed so many of our brothers' lives and sisters. And so having this opportunity to teach now with the youth, with probation, you know, we're allowed to speak to them. And I think that's so important where we're at now as a company, because we're reaching to them early, before, you know, they go to prison. Hopefully they don't, but at least they're hearing it. And probation appreciates it. I don't know, Major, if you want to talk a little bit about what that's meant, but probation is like, man, I'm glad you guys are talking to them, because when you guys talk, their attention is, they're listening, you know, so I get it. I get it. So yeah, it's meant a lot. Jeremie, just having y'all entrust us with these leadership roles, right? It not only gives me confidence, but it gives me everything back that I had lost, my humanity as a person, you know, being able to teach now as a human being, and not being like I was when I was in prison. So I appreciate y'all so much for trusting me with the leadership role. So.
Major, did you want to speak to probation?
Yeah, I would like to say that, yeah, you know, when we go into not the institutions, but when we do the Zoom meetings with the kids, you know, and we start to share our stories, where we come from, how we got here, how we can relate to where they at today, it just changes the dynamic of what the work that we need to put out there now, as far as to get them to push through the work. And the moment they start to see themselves in us in some way, of us being vulnerable, or just us being, you know, people that they can relate to, it makes it much easier for us to do the work, to get them to take it in, because there's a lot of resistance, especially at that young age. You know, there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of influence, you know, in the room, and we try to get them to separate themselves from what the influence looks like, but also realize that there's something that they want to gain through this process. And Richard, John, they have the ability to reach those kids through numerous times of going through this process, that they've learned the skill that the Actors Gang has taught us over the years through different classes that we've been involved in. And it's definitely starting to work with the young kids, and we can feel it. And we notice too, at the end, if we find that the ship is not going our way, we sit down, we have a meeting, we discuss, we figure out how do we get the next kids to open up? How do we get them to see this program as an outlet to a better life? Just not to change subjects, but what I noticed too is that I built a relationship with a lot of correctional officers at Avenal State Prison, because they had came down and watched the place several times. And because I had a specific job, I would see a lot of the correctional officers because I was a taxi driver. And I noticed that when they would come into these classes and I would see them, that relationship started to build over time. And I started to see these people as just human beings. They started to see me as a human being. And when I started to feel that, it made me realize, like, I wasn't locked up mentally. Mentally, I was physically out there, you know, but my body was still there. And the correctional officers made me feel like I was mentally free. And that made me really feel really good. And it made me really challenge myself every day, because they saw me as someone that they can see in the free world. So they played a major role as well in my change in getting to this point, because they didn't see me as just someone that had blues on, that was just walking through the system, but they see me as a person that wanted to change my life for the better. So I really appreciate the correctional officers who stood behind me and would see me and greet me, Mr. Bunton. That made me feel really good. And so I think those small details is so important to bring back a person's value, because we devalue ourselves for so long, because we've been inside for so long, we devalue ourselves, and then we start to learn how to value ourselves with the help of correctional officers who are seeing these changes take place in all of us. So I do love the correctional officers who played a role in every last one of us that was at Avenal State Prison.
So it's such a rare opportunity to have this group of people together. And I just want to reiterate, I so appreciate everything that's been shared. Rosemary and the Avenal team. It means so much that you guys have taken the time out to be here with us. We only have about 5 or 6 minutes left, so I just want to open it up, open the floor up. If there's any burning desire for any other shares, or you have any specific questions anybody wants to ask anybody, we'll just open it up here for our last little 10 minutes together.
I just want to go back to what Major just said about a correctional officer seeing him as human. The more I interacted with the population, the more I came to their graduations, their plays, the more I saw them on the outside. And the more it was harder for me to just look at them as people convicted for a crime. They became humans, and I did everything in my power that I could do for them, because I knew they had made peace with themselves and they had made peace with their victims. And I knew they deserved to be on the outside. And in so saying, the more removed we are from the population, the more we do not see their humanity. The more involved we get with them as students, as artists, as people you can see as professional, the more you begin to see them as people who could be your neighbors. And I think as correctional employees, where we have learned so much from what people like Major, Loya, and Dich have done. We have learned that change is possible and that we create that environment for change. And we're powerful catalysts, because when people dehumanize themselves, it's hard for them to see their future. When we bring our humanity to them so that they can see their humanity, their future becomes real to them. And I just wanted to add that.
Amen to that. Do you have something, Rich?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The whole trust thing you just mentioned, Ms. Ndoh. So once we were rolling and we were into the class 6 months, we started getting creative. And so we wrote a play. And so by trusting that, oh my God, this is what really changed for us as a group, why we wanted to give back so much. By us trusting Ms. Ndoh and her goals, she rewarded us by allowing us to go live on Facebook. Live on Facebook. Like, who's gonna trust 25 inmates to go live on Facebook? And when she did that for us, I think that we never look back. That was like the highlight of my being locked up career. You know, so the trust was huge. Right? I don't know, Major, Johnny, you guys want to add anything to that, what that meant? But when you did that, Ms. Ndoh, we never look back.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. And it's all about the culture, you know, and it starts from the top. And this was the only prison that I've ever been to where I felt so cared for, looked after. And the staff there, they treated you like human beings, just what Major was talking about. And I love that. It allowed me to continue to thrive in that type of setting. At other places, this would totally not happen. No, and even down the line, aside from the Actors Gang, Dee came to me about the American Cancer Society relay that I kind of kicked up a storm about, and finally she's like, "Are you the guy that's been harassing them?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, it's finally happening." And so that shows the trust that everyone had there with the inmate and staff. So I definitely loved Avenal, and I cannot say it's like my saving grace. That prison saved me and gave me an opportunity to come back into society.
All right. Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think we're close to at time, but I just want to thank you guys again for everything you've shared, all the vulnerability. Rosemary, we will for sure try and carry on this way forward that you've mapped out for us. We're so appreciative of it on your behalf and all of the staff that joined us today. Hopefully to our friends tuning in from afar, this has been a valuable conversation with you. Please join us next week, and after this airs, we'll do we'll come back and do a Q&A with you guys, but hopefully you found it of value. Thank you so much to Scott and Kurt and the Shakespeare in Prison Network for just figuring out a way in the times of COVID to push programming forward and put it at the forefront. We're so grateful. Thank you.